Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wednesday Night Bible Class. I hope that you have had an amazing week. Here it is dark and gloomy and raining, so I have incorporated some extra lighting, hoping that will help the situation. In today's class, we are going to look at the exiles who have returned home from Babylon. What kinds of situations did they encounter when they got home? Because as we know, there were people in Judah when they came back. There were the Judeans who stayed there. There were people who migrated from different areas. There were also people who resettled the land because they had been conquered. And as we know, Assyria had a policy of conquering a land and scattering the people. So who was in the land when the Israelites come back from exile? And how did they get along with those groups that were in the land? The temple was destroyed, so what did they do? How did they worship? We're going to look at all of that in today's class. Let's get right into it. As fascinating as always. So let's summarize what we just covered. Persia came in and conquered Babylon, and the king of Persia, who was Cyrus, had a policy of sending back people who were conquered back to their homeland. The Bible tells us that God used Cyrus to send the Israelites back to Judah, to Jerusalem. The Cyrus cylinder confirms this policy of Cyrus's sending peoples back to their homelands. The Cyrus cylinder also talks about the Persian god, little g, Marduk, who Cyrus credits for him being able to conquer Babylon. Now, one of the things that we pointed out, and something that I like to think about when I read about all of these ancient gods, is the fact that even though these ancient peoples, all the other ancient peoples had their little g gods, God is the only one who is still around. And to me, that means a lot. First of all, it's fascinating that no other little g gods have lasted throughout the centuries, but God has. He was always there. He will always be here. He is the only one that's lasted and stood the test of time. We will continue to see that as we move through the 400 years of silence period that we're going to cover next, and as we continue to move into the New Testament when the Greeks took over. And of course the Greeks had their gods, but you don't see them anymore. They're like all of the other little g gods are a part of ancient history, and God is the only one who is still here. Some of the Israelites came back. Some of them stayed in Babylon because they had assimilated there. The ones that stayed in Babylon, though, they supported the ones who were going back. When the exiles got back to Judah, they encountered peoples of the land. Okay, I'm going to stop doing this. When the exiles got back to Judah, they encountered what the Bible calls peoples of the land. Now, that could have been some of the Israelites that stayed in Judah and were not exiled. That could have been the people who were deported to Judah, because the Assyrians, when they were in control, they had a policy of conquering a territory and scattering their people. So they could have scattered some people from somewhere else down to Judah. It also could have been some of the Israelites from the north who didn't go into Assyrian captivity but fled south down to Judah. So they got back and they encountered these peoples of the land. And how are they going to handle dealing with these people of the land in their homeland? The first thing they wanted to do when they got back was to sacrifice. So they went to the Temple Mound and wanted to sacrifice there, but they were in a hurry because they were afraid of the people of the land. Now, I don't know why they were afraid of the people of the land. The next thing that they wanted to do was to begin to rebuild the temple. They started out with the altar because they wanted to be able to give sacrifices. The next thing they did was to lay the foundation. Now, in this process of rebuilding the temple, they had some Sanballats, aka haters. There were people there who were trying to frustrate the rebuilding of the temple, who were trying to confuse the people. They were angry that they were rebuilding the temple and fortifying, and so they were haters. If you look at Nehemiah chapter 2 and chapter 4, you will see that one of these people who were hating on the Israelites who had come back, his name was Sanballat. I told you guys that back in the day, I had some friends who would call each other Sanballats, and I had no idea what they were talking about. They were calling each other haters. It was all in good fun. But so if you want to call somebody a hater and them not know what you're talking about, just call them a Sanballat. So they had these issues with the people that were in the land. The foreigners that were in the land were an obstacle to the Israelites that had come back. And the Israelites that had come back were a threat to the foreigners who were in the land. Eventually, through Ezra and the governor Nehemiah, the people began to purify themselves from the peoples in the land. We all know that back in the day, the ancient Israelites were forbidden to intermarry. So Ezra and the governor Nehemiah, when they came back and found that the people had been mixing, the people who had been married to foreigners had to divorce their foreign spouses and put away their foreign children in order to purify the Israelite nation. While they're rebuilding the temple, they are also reestablishing the Torah as the law of the land. One of the ways that this happens is that Ezra gets the Torah and he reads it out loud, and all the people stand and signifying a reverence for the reading of the Torah. Also, what we learn is that most of the people that come back speaking the language Aramaic. The Torah is written in Hebrew. So the Levites end up being translators of the Torah from the Hebrew language to Aramaic, which is the language that the people now speak because they were captive in Babylon, and Aramaic was the language of Babylon. The next lecture is going to be about Israel's their quest for their national identity. So they're back home, they're surrounded by all of these different groups, these different people. There are different people that are in their land. How do they express their national identity amongst all of these different people? Okay, that's going to be our next lecture. In our final class, we're going to do one huge recap of the entire Old Testament. No, that's way too much. We're going to do a little bitty recap of the entire Old Testament. We're just going to hit the main points just so that we have a recap and a better picture before we move into our next series. I'm so excited about this next series. I'm excited about all of it. Y'all, I stay excited. I stay excited. But I'm excited about our next series because we're going to do that 400-year in-between period, the silent years that they call it. I think the way we're going to do it a little bit differently. So we're going to do it in more of a storytelling type of format. It's not going to be the video that we watch and then my commentary. It's going to be more like a storytelling type of thing. And I am really excited about that. Of course, then after that, we move into the New Testament. Oh God, there's so much. And then we're going to travel through the New Testament. Once we do that, then we're going to get into like the everyday type stuff. So let me know what you think about the storytelling method as opposed to the video method. I have not found a good video series on the 400 years middle period, but I have an outline of the 400-year middle period, and so I kind of, let me just stop because I'm doing it. Let me know if you have any questions about this particular class or what we've covered so far. If you have any questions on where we're going, where this is progressing, let me know. Leave those in the comments or shoot me an email. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Please share the video if you think that you have someone who would be interested in joining the class. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you next week. We are almost done with the Old Testament. I'm so excited. See you next week.